Now, before we go on to our next speaker, is there anyone with a question? Not yet. Don't worry, you still have time. Yes, there's someone with a question. Fantastic. Yes, the lineup is starting, by the way. In the first session, we actually ran out of time because we had so many questions. So please prepare your questions, and we will get to them when the Q&A is. And I'd also like to acknowledge our online audience. Thank you from wherever you're watching. We have an incredible live audience here. If anyone is here tweeting, please connect with them. They will give you some more, maybe pictures from here as well, and also get to network. Now, to our next speaker, Dorothea Pio is a biodiversity finance specialist. You heard that, eh? Biodiversity finance specialist at Fauna and Flora International. Now, Dorothea focuses on creating a direct link between healthy forests and improved well-being of forest-dependent communities. And she does this by providing financial incentives for avoided or reduced deforestation. Now, she will be talking about coupling restoration finance streams for long-term success. Please help me welcome Dorothea on stage.
Thanks. This is to go next, yeah. Thank you so much for welcoming me here. It's a huge honor to be here today. I'll get straight to it, as I only have 7 minutes. There is nothing that makes me feel more alive, inspired, and excited about the world than to walk through an Indonesian forest. The sounds, smells, and sights are just like nothing else in the world. From the tallest, largest flowers to the largest moths, to the multitude of creepy crawlies, Indonesian forests are just filled with hidden treasures. But as you all know, the global economy currently grossly undervalues forests, only considering a small fraction of the values and services they account for. And so we're losing them at a tremendous rate. Over the past few decades, we've lost about a third of them, meaning we have about just under 50% of Indonesian forests left. That's a really scary thought, but at the same time, it also means we still have a hell of a lot to save, so we need to get to work. Fauna and Flora International spends a lot of time thinking about how to get longer-term finance into landscapes. The typical grants we work with are 2 to 3 years, and yet we know we need to be in a landscape for between 10 and 20 years to have the kind of transformative impacts we really want to see. And so what makes a difference is that not only are we there implementing things on the ground for that kind of period of time, but also we get to pilot, refine, and adapt approaches during that period of time. And more importantly still, we get to build relationships, we get to build trust, and we get to demonstrate commitment. And it's through those relationships and through understanding what brings together people from different sectors that we can really jump from the theory and the commitment to the action and achieve impact at ever greater scales. So today I'm going to talk about 2 examples of work we're involved in. One is private sector-led, the other is community-led. As an ecologist, I spend a huge amount of time fantasizing, daydreaming about how to secure larger, interconnected blocks of forest, of the kinds that can support a huge number of species, of the kinds that can support species that require larger ranges. Things like Sumatran tiger, elephant, orangutan, rhino, they will visit smaller forest fragments from time to time, but in order to feed themselves, reproduce, and survive over the long term, they need large, interconnected forests. And the opportunities we have to safeguard these areas are now becoming extremely limited. Beyond national parks and other types of reserves, the largest blocks of forest are often held by companies in the form of concessions and destined for conversion. So the Riau Ecosystem Restoration or Restaurasi Ecosystem Riau site in Kampar Peninsula in Sumatra is an extraordinary, pioneering, private sector-led example of ecosystem restoration and preservation located in Sumatra. It covers 250,000 hectares, and to give you an idea what that means, it's twice the size of Greater London. And from being destined to conversion, it's now been set aside for conservation and restoration. Management over such a massive area isn't straightforward. It involves mapping boundaries, carrying out surveys, figuring out integrated management plans, monitoring, and most importantly, engaging communities constructively and genuinely addressing their concerns and needs. This kind of ambition, scale, and longevity of commitment is extraordinary. And it just presents a great example of what private sector can do when the necessary vision and leadership is there. So next, I'm going to talk about a community-led initiative. FFI has been facilitating the clarification of land tenure rights for communities over the past 8 years in Indonesia. And what this means is that it's facilitating and helping communities to get licenses, 35-year renewable licenses, that legally recognize their forest. And what this means is that communities are actually committing to maintaining forest cover. And they're doing this instead of converting forests to coffee or other commodities, which arguably are more lucrative in the short term, at least. What this demonstrates is that forest ecosystem services are of real value to people, and land tenure, clear land rights, are also of real value to people. Apart from keeping these forests standing, this approach is bringing valuable improvements in livelihoods and well-being of the local communities, especially for women who are in charge of developing all of the village-level businesses, sustainable businesses in these communities, what they're reporting is increased social cohesion, among other benefits. I think the long-term survival of these sites is the key to the long-term survival of these sites is this. We need to align the needs and ambitions of communities with those of the private sector in a way that serves and supports the Indonesian government to also work towards its targets. And that is how we're going to be able to scale this approach and become less and less reliant on short-term 2 to 3 year project cycles. So how do we do this? Number one, by linking communities to buyers of carbon credits. Now, despite lingering and pervasive negativity about the carbon market, the voluntary carbon market, there are buyers out there who are prepared to pay a premium for high biodiversity and high social impact. Number two, by linking communities to large ethical buyers, and I'm specifically talking about the cosmetic industry. Number three, by linking communities to companies that need to fulfill sustainability criteria. And if you're familiar with RSPO, I'm talking about RSPO-certified companies that need to compensate and remediate for past forest clearance. So we want different finance streams to come into a landscape, to do more than just cover costs. We want them to help shift the local economy towards a less extractive model. So it's hard to generalize lessons learned over such a diverse portfolio of work, but I'm going to try anyway. So number one, I'd say we need radical visionary leadership at every scale, from the tiniest village forest up to the hundreds of thousands of hectares. We need that leadership. We need to champion it. We need to nurture it. Some of our greatest accomplishments come from leadership at the village, in our communities, in companies we work with, in government bodies we work with, and of course, in our own staff. Number two, we need flexibility and not only longevity of funding. The realities of getting sustainable forest management done on the ground are really complex, and it's really important to recognize that being able to change, being able to respond to changing context means that our projects can achieve a hell of a lot more. So I'm closing with a call for cooperation. Let's speak to each other more. Let's connect more. It's not one approach or one organization that's going to be the game changer. We need to understand what's important to each of us to speed up and increase the scale at which we're protecting forests, to give future generations the privilege to exist and coexist with these amazing creatures. Thank you.